Hello, everyone. Rob Guest from football.london here, and welcome to the latest episode of Gold Guest Talk Tottenham, sponsored by NordVPN. Joining me today, it's Alasdair Gold. Ali, how are you?
Yeah, kind of good. It's such a weird match we've got to talk about. It's a match where there was so many good things to kind of talk about and enjoy, but ultimately it's a third defeat in a row for Spurs, and it's just got this really kind of strange feeling of trying to explain it. I kind of feel like probably how Celtic supporters felt 2 years ago, early on in the Ange Postecoglou era, where they could see that the football was really good and improving, yet the results weren't great. We kind of had that start, didn't we, to life under Ange, and it was like, yeah, wow, top of the table kind of thing. It was like amazing. And I think now we're in that period where the Celtic fans are like, we've got to stick with it because we can see where it's going. But obviously, there's going to be hiccups, and we're going to talk about the injuries, which are just ridiculous. But yeah, just a really strange match to talk about because of the way it unfolded. But that gives us loads to talk about. And I should also say, for those watching on YouTube, we apologise for the very dark background today. It's not one of kind of mourning the defeat. It is just purely because we had some technical issues with our normal background, and it will hopefully return next week. So apologies for the strange black background with like leaves and so. It's a very autumnal one, which isn't
Yeah,
really in keeping with the time.
I think we've got a duck in the top corner as well, haven't we? Rather than the Spurs badge for a change. So, right, let's get.
We're going to roll with it.
Yeah, we will. Right, let's talk about yesterday's game, a 2-1 defeat against Aston Villa. Uh, Again, a number of positives to take, but it's a fair defeat on the trot. We'll start with the team news because, it's fair to say that caused a bit of a surprise. Eyebrows were certainly raised at 1 p.m. when the team dropped. We expected some changes, especially after Ange had said that there were doubts over Pat Matasar going into the game, and he, in the end, wasn't in the match day squad. And that's starting at 11. Just wow. It was a team of four fullbacks, a very attack-minded midfield with Dejan Kulusevski dropping into his preferred number 10 role.
Four
Uh,
wingers, was it? It was four wingers and four fullbacks.
yeah, I didn't notice Brian Hill was in the team until like a couple of
He's not
minutes
that
after
tall.
the team. Because I was looking at the substitutes bench and there were two keepers and there was
Yeah.
8 subs. There were one missing because you'd have thought in that situation maybe bring a young lad on or bring Hugo back into the team, have 3 goalkeepers on the bench. But yeah, a very attack-minded team, and there was plenty of talk in the press room. I think it was Charlie from The Athletic who mentioned there'd never been a 6-6 draw in the Premier League, and given how both teams play extremely high lines, we were expecting goals and a really entertaining game, and that's exactly what we got in the end.
Yeah, it was just end to end chaos. But the ridiculous thing is, Spurs could have been out of sight so early on in the game as well. And even I was looking back at some of the quotes today from the Villa players and also Unai Emery, and all of them had a theme of pretty much like we rode our luck a bit. How we got to half time, kind of in a level was something else, and then obviously. You can't take away from them that how does I was going to say smash and grab. That always sounds really derogatory, but they were clinical. They had a few counter attacks. Vicario had to make a couple of saves, and ultimately they put the ball in the net. And having kind of had to watch Spurs do that to teams over recent years, we can't exactly complain when it gets done to Spurs. But ultimately, it was a day of poor finishing, but really terrific attacking football. And I kind of thought about this after I'd written my talking points, and I kind of wish I'd incorporated it a little bit. James Maddison wasn't playing, but Spurs probably created more than they have in any game this season. They were that good. And I think that's a massive nod towards Postecoglou football and the system, that you can have a team that is missing, let's be honest, if you look at it, it's 11 first team players. If you want to make a team out of it, include Alfie Whiteman in goal as well. It's 11 players that are missing. I looked down the Spurs first team squad page on the website, and it's just obscene. I don't think I'm trying to remember if there's any. Obviously, we had the COVID time when loads of players were out, but I'm trying to think if purely with injuries and absences, whether we've had that many missing in one go from the Spurs squad. I'm trying to think back to Lasagna Gate. There would have been a fair few missing that day, but can you think of any off the top of your head?
I can't. No, I think the thing is, at the moment, it's all come at once, and to key players as well. Some huge players missing from the starting 11. But the good thing is, yesterday, I mean, although they lost, they were still creating so many opportunities and goal, and it's probably some of the best football we've seen under Ange Postecoglou so far. And I mean, it was right from the word go. As soon as the referee blew his whistle, there was that opening for Matty Cash, and then Tottenham straight up the other end. Two really good chances inside the first 3 minutes. Destiny Doggy lifting the ball over the top, and then Dejan Kulusevski, crashing the ball against the post. But no, in terms of the injuries, I've just never seen anything like that, really. Not in recent years for Tottenham.
No. After Bentancur went off, technically, within his entire squad, Postecoglou had 13 available outfield first-team players. 13 senior players. it's just madness. And the squad, the lineup, it did catch us by surprise. We thought there was a potential that maybe he'd go for Emerson, but we kind of expected probably not. I don't think any of us, despite kind of advocating it in recent weeks, didn't actually expect him to go with Kulusevski in the number 10 kind of role. Or it was technically number 8/number 10 role. But yeah, he did. And I think I saw this stat somewhere just before the game started that it's only the second time in the Premier League era that Spurs have named a starting 11 without any English players in it as well, which, doesn't really mean too much. But I just thought that was quite interesting that, I suppose there were so many years when Harry Kane at least was always up front unless he had an ankle injury or something. But yeah, I've got some of the stats from the game as well. I want to talk about there's so much to talk about this game. There's the fact that there weren't even enough subs on the bench. There's that. There's what happened in the game. But as I say, so that injury hit squad, that was an 11 as well. Midfield three. There wasn't even a midfield three that you would say was Spurs' kind of top choice midfield three when they were flying under Postecoglou in the early games of the season. There was no Maddison, no Basuma, no Sarr. But yet, Spurs had 18 shots at goal, 8 shots on target. Martinez was forced into 6 saves. They also hit the woodwork twice, had 3 Sonny goals ruled out for offside. You always got to put quote marks around goals now because technically they weren't goals. And they also had, I watched this back. You and I don't think saw this at the time, unless I'm being, hugely unfair on you. Did you see what happened to Brian Hill?
The elbow in the face from Diego Carlos. Yeah, I didn't notice it at the time.
No, we didn't get any replays of it at the time either, did we?
No. All I saw from that was, I think, Brian Hill challenging Konza for the ball. Then it bounced and hit someone on the arm, and then he got a big whack in the face.
I absolutely took him out, and he was not even going for the ball. He was just knew he was there. And this is the weird thing is I think we get so many benefits from being at a match in terms of the view, what you see, the things off the ball you see, but we do actually miss some things that people at home are getting info on. Like we weren't aware that the VAR had absolutely kind of was having major issues in that first half. It had some kind of outage where apparently it wasn't working properly early on. So I'm not entirely sure which things it came back for. I think someone suggested it came back in time to rule out the Watkins goal. So I don't know whether it was involved with that moment because that was the moment where Spurs, they were calling for handball, weren't they? Because it technically hit a player hand, I think, as Martinez tried to grab it. I think it was back in operation because the suggestion was that it was so intently looking at the handball they didn't even really look at the fact that perhaps Brian Hill was fouled in the build up to that, and that could have been a penalty. That could have technically been a red card. It was really dangerous play when you watch it back. And fair play to Brian Hill. We said about his size and not being the biggest, but my goodness, he shook that off absolutely. Crazy game. And I think that lineup was a result of Postecoglou being really unhappy about the Wolves game. I mean, you were there for the press conference on Friday. He spoke about that Wolves game, didn't he? And actually, despite seemingly being happy with the effort of the players, he wasn't happy with the actual performance at all, was he?
I can't actually remember what he actually said about that, to be honest. But no, I don't think he was
Sorry to
impressed.
ask.
Yeah, no, don't worry, it's fine. But yeah, I mean, we've seen Spurs playing some really, really good football this season, but that just wasn't the case at Wolves. But it did appear like they were going to get away with it, and then they just lost the game in the final 6 minutes of stoppage time. But yeah, it was chalk and cheese, wasn't it? Really, when you're comparing the games, and certainly the midfield three at Wolves was very defensively minded. This one against Villa, this was just all-out attack. I mean, that's what Tottenham fans want to see. And what I said to you after the game was, I think for Spurs at the moment, given all the injuries, attack really is the best form of defence because they've got it in themselves, to create all these openings. The only issue is scoring them at the moment. They had a makeshift backline of 4 fullbacks yesterday, not a lot of height in there. But Villa didn't really trouble Spurs in the first half, basically just because the ball was in and around Aston Villa's box. So while they are, big issues in terms of missing some key players, Spurs have more than enough quality to put teams to bed at the moment, but they're just not doing it.
Absolutely. Because you said attack is the best form of defence so many times yesterday, I used it as a tribute in my talking points. It was my first subheading was exactly that, in tribute to the your view on that. And yeah, I shouldn't have asked you that. I didn't realise you wouldn't remember that, but I did actually listen to a recording of what he said yesterday. Of what he said on Friday, but I had listened to it yesterday, and Postecoglou essentially said that wasn't his way of football. He wasn't happy with the way they played it. It wasn't the kind of aggressive, kind of confident style of fearless football that he wants. And I think as a result of that, it's no shock that 2 senior players straight out of the team, Højbjerg and Dyer, on the bench, 2 of last year's leadership group as well, which is kind of says a lot about the changes in the team. I was thinking about those. I think you can understand Emerson in terms of that extra little bit of pace for the Villa counterattacks. I would say that I probably, for the faults that many see in Dyer, I do think his passing range is better than Emerson's. I do think he would have the ability to use the ball, but perhaps that's kind of the point, was that he just wanted the centre-backs to very quickly give the ball off to other players rather than actually trying anything fancy and diagonal balls and all of that sort of thing. Which was very much left more to the fullbacks, especially Porro. Porro plays some beautiful balls over the top. And you saw him having a bit of a moan at Ben Davies, didn't you, at one point?
And yeah, this was literally inside the first couple of minutes. I think pretty much after Villa had that chance when Matty Cash couldn't direct his header on goal, and Davies had the ball, just outside the box, but he was just a bit too slow in, passing it to his left to Destiny Dogging. I think that happened a couple of times, and you could see Ange on the touchline wasn't happy at all. But yeah, Davies got that message through perfectly clear, and then after that, no problem at all. As soon as he got the ball, he was, just passing it to his teammates, and yeah, I mean that's what Ange wants. And if someone's not doing that, he will let them know.
Yeah, absolutely. We hear him a lot from where we're sat, and and we're not right by the dugout like we used to be at White Hart Lane, but we still, you can hear him. I think that's why he's sometimes really hoarse after games as well, because he shouts and then some. Yeah, I was thinking back on kind of the back line. It's it was so makeshift. It's so difficult to kind of really have a massive moan about a back line of fullbacks. I mean, there's plenty of ways of looking at it. You could say that maybe Daesh still should have played in there, although I actually think, looking back at it in hindsight, probably was the right decision with the high line, with the way that Villa were very much always going to play on that counter. I know some people are very keen to see Alfie Dorrington thrown in there. As someone that is constantly pushing how good I think Alfie Dorrington's going to be, I still think that's a big ask to chuck him in there. And I get the logic that people are saying that there's other clubs that have thrown players in there, but also what I will always say to people is even someone like myself that sees a fair few of the games that the youth teams will play, and I'll watch them on Spurs play if I'm not there. It's such a different kind of football, and I think I probably would leave it to the manager, knowing in training whether the player's ready to make that step into the team yet, and whether it's the right moment. And especially Postecoglou, he's a manager who will use young players, so it's not like he's someone that doesn't do that. Yeah, I don't know, and I do also wonder how many people calling for players to be playing have actually seen them play as well. That's always something I find quite funny, having seen it with so many players over the years. And don't get me wrong, I get overexcited about kind of young talented players at Spurs as well. So I think, yeah, I mean, there were some scary moments early on for that defence. We saw it was a few kind of early chances that they had, like you said, the Cash one. Who had? I think you might have mentioned it earlier. Who had the? There was another header as well, wasn't there? Or an early shot. I think there were two early.
I can't remember that one.
Yeah, there were two early Villa chances. I remember, and then they obviously had the offside Watkins goal as well. So yeah, they were under pressure, and I think the thing what we kept saying to each other was every set piece was scary because you don't have that height. You have, naturally four fullbacks. Trying to think if any of them are even 6 foot. I mean, Destiny's reasonably tall.
Emerson's tall.
Is Emerson tall?
Tallish.
Tallish.
I don't know his actual height, but yeah, that was.
I guess they're not towering centre backs. Is probably the
No,
best.
he's certainly not Mickey van der Ven.
No.
And I mean that was evident in the goal what Pau Torres scored. I mean,
yes,
brilliant, really, really good header from him. Bit too easy from a Tottenham perspective, but I think you've also got to give credit to Douglas Luiz for that fantastic ball. Really, really good set piece, and yeah, that was just such a shame. Really to concede. 7-8 minutes into injury time at the end of the first half, because then your team talk just changes really. But Spurs, in all honesty, really should have been a couple of goals clear at that point.
Absolutely. And this is the thing, just very kind of quickly wrapping up on the defence. It's like they can play as well as they want for most of the game. This was similar with Wolves, but if you just switch off for moments, that's what defending, unfortunately, is all about. Same as with at the other end of the pitch, it's about putting the ball in the net, despite whatever you do before that point. With the defenders, I felt Ben Davies wasn't close enough to Torres. He's kind of trying to. I've watched it back. He's kind of pulling at his shirt, trying to impede him and stop him, but it's not enough. And then the second goal, I would put it more on Emerson. I think Watkins just drifts too easily past Emerson. I know people want to throw Davies in there as well, but I would say with Davies, it's behind him. If you're running it in between two defenders, for me, it should really be the defender who can see the player coming is probably the one at fault, rather than the one who happens behind them. That's communication as well. Yeah. Go on, you're going to say?
That was a great finish, though, from Ollie Watkins. Watching it back last night, I didn't realise how quickly he took it. It was literally one touch and bang, straight into the bottom corner, and nothing Vicario could do about that. I mean, good play from Tielemans and Watkins, but again, a bit all too easy from a Spurs perspective. Just need to be closed down. But yeah, credit to Watkins. Good finish.
Yeah, it was too easy to carve Spurs apart in that moment as well. And I guess the midfield was constantly changing as well as the game went on, with Bentancur going off. But yeah, I mean, let's go to the positives really after that. I mean, let's start with Bentancur before he went off. What did you make of him in that early kind of, I guess, 27 minutes before he got the unfortunate tackle from a player that we seem to unfortunately know too well at the moment for bad tackles on Spurs players?
Fantastic. One of the best players on the pitch. Looked like the Rodrigo Bentancur who we'd seen performing like that week in, week out prior to that ACL injury picked up at Leicester back in February. I think this was always a game we'd probably expect Bentancur to start, given the midfield issues and the fact that he got 86 minutes under his belt for Uruguay in midweek. I think it was against Bolivia, that demonstrated that he was in a position to start. And yeah, really, really good on the ball. Caused Villa some real troubles. He's just such a classy player. He was at the heart of all of Tottenham's really good attacking play, and such a shame when he got that injury. I mean, absolute shocking challenge from Matty Cash. Bentancur just nips the ball ahead of him, and Cash is going in, full whack, and he's caught him. And yeah, real nasty one. But initially it looked like he was all right. He'd play on, but a minute or so later went to ground, and Tottenham players were seething about it. I think Dejan Lo Celso was the first one who went over and had a word with Cash. He had like his mouth covered, so you couldn't see what he was saying, but he wasn't happy. Emerson came from defence to do likewise. Brian Hill came across to, have his say as well, but John McGinn was, keeping hold of him. I think he was just trying to calm things down. It's just such a shame for Bentancur, especially to have been out for 9 months or so, and for this to happen in fourth appearance since he's come back, his first start
for the club,
for Tottenham, and saw him walking through the mix zone after the game, walking a bit gingerly. So it's just a case now of, waiting to discover the extent of the injury, and hopefully it's not a serious one and that he's not on the sidelines for, a period of time, because given the injuries Tottenham have at the moment, they can't really afford to lose another quality player, someone who I think we all expected to, step up and make things happen in midfield over the coming weeks, but we'll just have to wait and see whether that's the case or not.
Was he wearing a moon boot when he walked out?
No.
That might be a positive side. I don't know. It's difficult because I don't think Maddison was either, was he? So yeah, you can't read too much into that. But yeah, if people aren't aware, what normally happens after a game is I go into the press conference and Guesty goes down to the mix zone to talk to all the players. So he gets to see those little things as they kind of walk out and who's hobbling and who's not and stuff like that. And you spoke to Decky, didn't you? So we'll talk about Kulusevski in a little bit as well. On Bentancur, it's funny. That's all the Spanish players came running, and actually Romero was on the bench as well, screaming, wasn't he? Yeah, I was kind of in two minds when I saw that, because with Romero, I love the fact that of course he's sticking up for his teammate and all of that, but there is a part of me that thinks, well, I don't think if anyone in that ground should be moaning about bad tackles, it's probably not Christian Romero. I would hope Christian Romero would be sitting down there writing 100 times, writing his lines, I must not let Tottenham Hotspur down. I must not let Tottenham Hotspur down. Because, these 3 defeats, he's played a big part in these 3 defeats by not actually being there for the team. He really has. You think of all of those games, had he been there in that centre of defence, not losing his head like he did against Chelsea, and I think they'd maybe even come away with a win in all of them. I'd even go as far to say that. I think even the Chelsea game, had they, let's say, it's all weird, it's like the butterfly effect. We don't really know what would have happened the rest of the game if he hadn't got sent off, whether Udogie would have got sent off or not. But even I think with 10 men with Romero in that team, I think Spurs, probably the way they were playing, get at least a point against Chelsea. I think they definitely, the way they played at Wolves would have been different as well. I think he influences the way they play going forward and the aggressive style he has. And I think yesterday, I don't think Villa get through. I know it's probably a bit, it's over the top saying that he shouldn't even be angry at Bentancur, the challenge on him. But I just felt, I do hope that he has reflected on this, Romero, because it's such a brilliant start to the season. He really, really has let Spurs down. I think, Basuma, you could argue to a degree as well with the 2 missed games that he's had. Doggie's a little bit different because he's just a young guy that got over enthusiastic, I think, in a couple of challenges. Bentancur was superb before that point. His pass over the top was glorious to Porro, which I just wish Porro had pulled the trigger and had a shot rather than passing it to Sonny. And even Postecoglou said afterwards, I think it was when I asked about Bentancur, he said everything Spurs had done well, the way they dominated the game was because of how good Bentancur was, and he was shaping the way they were playing. And I was in Matty Cash, my goodness. I thought the one on Matt Doherty a couple of seasons ago was worse because it was higher. But what I would say is it was so late. There's no real intention that you're going to get the ball there. And interesting, from what I understand, apparently the Villa players surrounded him in the tunnel as he went down the tunnel at halftime, just to make sure that no one went for him. I don't know whether Romero had charged into the tunnel or not, but apparently that was what they did to get him out of there. And I don't think it was any shock that he didn't return for the second half, because he was getting jeered by the entire stadium pretty much every time he touched the ball. It's just, I do feel for Bentancur. I hope it's nothing bad. I don't like the fact that he couldn't play on because he's a bit of a warrior as well. So for him to do that doesn't sit particularly well with me. Postecoglou didn't know immediately after the game what it was all about, as in what the kind of impact was of the injury and how bad it was going to be. But I guess you've got Basuma coming back, but still, Spurs are so light on numbers; they can't afford to have a player of anywhere near the quality of Bentancur being out for any set amount of time.
No, just fingers crossed on Bentancur. Another midfielder I think we need to talk about, Dejan Lo Celso. We've been waiting quite a while to see Lo Celso in Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham team. The player himself has been desperate to be playing a lot, especially after such a good pre-season. But as we've said on the past few podcasts, it's just not been helped by James Maddison's brilliant form and then also his own injury. So it was his first start since Nuno's last game, wasn't it?
It was.
Manchester United, October 2021. Incredible. I mean, he has spent 18 months away at Villarreal, really good loan spell there. But Postecoglou said in his press conference on Friday, I can remember this, that he rates Lo Celso even before he'd come to Tottenham. He knows what Lo Celso's about, what he can offer. So I think he was probably always a player he wanted to keep at the club. And just like Bentancur, I mean, he was, key to a lot of Spurs' really, really good football in the first half. Some of his passing and movement was fantastic. He was involved in that one where Dejan Kulusevski flicked it through to Bryan Hill and he had the shot what tested Emi Martinez and Lo Celso. Just good to see him get on the ball and just running at Villa and just showing what he can offer. And he certainly deserved his goal. Caught it really well. Did get a bit of a nick off Diego Carlos, what took it past Martinez. But you could just see in his celebration what it meant to him because it's just been probably such a frustrating time for him at the club. He's just never really got going. And it's mad that this is his 5th season at the club. It was 4 years ago now since he signed on loan. And I can only really remember probably the first few months of 2020 when Jose Mourinho was manager, when we probably saw the best of Lo Celso. It's just never really happened for him, but maybe now it could under Ange Postecoglou.
Yeah, I remember that little period. He kind of earned his permanent deal with that. He was that good. It's mad when you think about it. When you kind of total up what his loan deal cost and the actual permanent fee, he's edging towards being like the record transfer. Spurs, he's up there. And yet he has played so few games for Spurs. Like you say, this is his first start since 2021. More than 2 years ago. It was October, wasn't it? I have felt sorry for him this season. I think he was kind of sold by Postecoglou on probably being the rotation option with Maddison and forcing his way in there. And obviously then for Maddison, I think not even just when he got injured, but Maddison we knew was carrying lots of knocks and issues. And even then, Lo Celso wasn't coming on for him as games progressed. It was more Højbjerg was coming on to I guess shore things up. And to be fair, we praised Højbjerg for doing exactly that. So I can't, I guess, moan too much about it. But I do feel with Lo Celso, he's just been waiting for his chance. I know Postecoglou played it down a little bit, but I think the 70 minutes he got for Argentina in the week against Brazil was big for him. I think it got a lot of confidence in his fitness, in his legs and sharpness. He set up the only goal of the game for Otamendi as well. And I think that gave him a little bit of confidence going into this match. And, this is the role that he played to great effect for Argentina for quite a long period of time, being on the left of a midfield three. And I've always said this about Lo Celso, that the best kind of aspect of him is the fact that he's aggressive off the ball and on it while also being creative. And if you can get him doing that consistently, you've got a really good player there. People obviously have written him off because I do feel like he's had probably too many injury problems at Spurs. I think that's been a big issue for him. even this season. He made that start against Fulham, had to come off at half-time with a problem. So it obviously still remains to be seen whether he can keep this up consistently. But I just thought he did so much good stuff for Spurs. He just kept the ball ticking over really quickly and moving it, and little probing quick passes as well. I might have his stats here somewhere. 3 key passes, 74 passes in all with a 91.9% success rate. Made 4 tackles, 1 interception, 1 dribble, 2 shots at goal. And of course, one of those was that lovely kind of technique to hit that half volley. I know it got a deflection, but it was just the way he caught it was absolutely perfect. We've seen so many players do those and sky them into the back of the south stand or the north stand. And he did it just superbly. And Postecoglou praised him, said he did really well, very creative, always threatening and worked hard. And I think he'll have a big part to play in these weeks ahead now, as long as he can stay fit. And I think, didn't Decky praise him as well after the game?
Yeah, he was full of praise for him. Said he played really well, and he thinks he's going to play a big part in the coming weeks. And I think he certainly deserves so. After his performance yesterday, he just begs the question: why on earth wasn't he in the team against Wolves, especially when Maddison was missing? But we've seen what Lo Celso can offer. I think he made a real big impression on Tottenham fans and Ange Postecoglou yesterday. And I think he's got a key role to play now over the next month or so. Right.
I was going to ask you very quickly. Do you think Postecoglou was annoyed with himself, as annoyed with himself about the Wolves team selection as he was the performance? Because he did go very safe, and we were surprised by that, which is not his style.
Yeah, I imagine so. Yeah, wasn't his style, especially playing free, defensively minded midfielders. The Spurs were just lacking someone who could link up midfield and attack, and just that bit of creativity what Lo Celso could have offered. And I think he'll have learned a few things probably from his team selection at Wolves. He likes to play bold attacking football, and that just wasn't the case at Wolves. So, given his football philosophy, he'll have been intent on changing that. And I think that's exactly what we saw yesterday was an Ange Postecoglou football team.
Absolutely, yeah. And even the Kulusevski decision that he obviously made yesterday, even he could have played at Wolves in that role.
Yeah, definitely. Before we get on to Decky, as we're now halfway through the pod, Ali, you want to let everyone know about the benefits of using NordVPN?
Of course. If you're not aware by now, you should be. The Gold Guest Talk Tottenham podcast is sponsored by NordVPN, and you can use the service in a host of different ways to enhance your internet experience. NordVPN is the fastest VPN in the world, and that means there's no buffering, no lagging, and you can stream your favorite shows from anywhere in the world without your bandwidth throttling. It's a service I've used for many, many years, long before they came on board as our podcast sponsor. I've used it in countries across the world, different continents, to be able to watch the things that I would normally watch at home, which for some unknown reason, companies stop you watching as soon as you cross a border. And this way you can just set your device to being back home in England or wherever you may be and watch whatever you want. And also, it's really good for certain security aspects as well. If you use a public Wi-Fi and you don't want people trying to get into your phone, it's very helpful in certainly going a long way to locking down aspects of your device. And not only that, but the outlay on a NordVPN subscription is cheaper for you in the long run. And that's because you can purchase streaming services or bookings from other countries at a much cheaper rate. So, for example, you can book flights from other countries and they might be cheaper by booking them from those countries. So it means you're paying out for Nord, but you're saving money overall. There's a whole host of other benefits from signing up to NordVPN, so why not give it a go? You can grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/goldguest to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan plus 4 additional months for free. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. And also, on top of that, Nord are also playing their part in Movember, which, if you're not aware of, is the worldwide annual event that takes place in November and involves men growing moustaches to raise awareness for men's health issues like prostate and testicular cancer and mental health. The goal of Movember is to encourage men to talk more openly about their health and to raise funds for research and support programs. So, during Movember, obviously we know there's only a couple of days left of this, But during November, new and recurring NordVPN customers in the UK will have a chance to contribute and donate £1, £5, or £10 to the charity, which Nord will match. So it's a chance to give to a great cause.
Right, let's get back on to speaking about Tottenham and Dejan Kulusevski, who, as you said, played in a bit of a deeper role in the number 10 role. It's, I think, the role he prefers. You spoke to him out in Israel last summer about his preferred position, and he did mention the number 10 role. It's something a few of us maybe, wanted to see him playing in that role because he has the qualities. I think his numbers when he was coming through at Atalanta, playing as a number 10 were absolutely incredible. But so far, we've just seen him on the right wing for Ange Postecoglou. But his versatility's got to come in really, really handy. And I'd probably say that's up there with Decky's best performances in the Tottenham shirt.
Yeah, I always remember the game at the Etihad. He was superb in that one. It's one of those. I thought he was brilliant. Yes, I thought he was so good. He was so creative. There were so many. It was one of those where I had just a couple of other players maybe being a little bit more clinical or in better positions. I mean, you think of the back heel to Brian Hill. Had Brian Hill been able to beat Martinez with his shot, you think of the ball across the box that Brennan Johnson couldn't quite get on the end of. And obviously Kulusevski himself, having that massive chance where he turned inside Carlos and then whacked it against the left-hand post. He kind of did this really intricate curled shot that probably all he had to do was just smash it into the net from that close range. And he had another run at the end where he went from one end of the pitch to the other, and he ended up hitting it at Martinez. But I think in terms of the sheer effort and what he created on the day, I think that's up there with some of his best performances. And I did ask him in it was pre-season, not this summer but last, about his favourite position. He said the number 10 role. And I mean, you spoke to him after the game as well, didn't you? I mean, what was the expression he used about how he felt after that performance yesterday?
In terms of his performance, he said basically he felt like, Dejan Kulusevski, like himself.
The real Decky, wasn't it?
That was it. The real Dejan.
Dejan, yeah.
Because
did you say Dejan or Dejan out of interest?
I can't remember.
No, because we always say Dejan, but maybe he changed it.
I've still got the recording. I can have a listen back to it. But I think when he initially came into the club, the levels he was produced was absolutely extraordinary. Scoring a lot of goals, assisting a lot. I think it might be 5 goals, 8 assists, something like that in about 17, 18 Premier League games. And since then, he's not really recaptured that form. His numbers for goals are certainly down. I still think he got about the same assists last season, but given how explosive he was when he first came to the club, I think everyone was expecting him like easy double figures in probably both goals and assists. And he's played well this season. Numbers maybe not the best, but you can put that down to poor finishing from others because he has been creating a lot of chances. And I think everything just seems to come together for him yesterday. Never stopped running all game. Yeah. Extremely creative. Caused Villa a host of problems with his running and his footwork, trickery, etc. He was really, really good. He was really honest as usual when he was speaking to us after the game. He says he was, just angry because of the result. Lost 2-1, and he's basically saying the performance from Tottenham was unbelievable. At times, the football they played, especially in the first 30 minutes, but what they need to do is a 90-minute game. And he also mentioned that the only thing they need to improve on is the mentality, because football-wise, everything's unbelievable at the moment. They're buying into Ange Postecoglou's football philosophy and creating all these chances, but they're just not taking them. They just need to be more clinical. And I think hopefully this is a sign of things to come from Kulusevski, because we've seen before he can be a big, big player. That everyone's just wanted him, to step up the level a bit more. But yesterday against Villa, I'd certainly rank that really highly in terms of the performances he's put in since he joined the club.
Yeah, and I think the thing people forget, he's 23. He's so young. I think because he absolutely set the Premier League on fire in those opening, like that second half of the season when he joined from Juventus. I think people just kind of expected, like, oh, of course, that's what he's going to do all the time. What an amazing player. It's like, no, he's a young player. I think, to be fair, I think we did say that at the time. It's like, he's not going to be able to maintain this. He's going to have little kind of periods where he's not going to be able to do that. You know, there's so few young players out there in the world that are just consistently amazing. I mean, you know, Mbappe is probably the closest you're going to get to that because he just has been the most ridiculous player over the years. But yeah, I think sometimes people are a bit too harsh on him. I think sometimes, yes, he needs to make slightly better decisions at the end of the runs that he makes. But on the whole, I think you take him out of the Tottenham team, I think it struggles without him. I don't think it's as creative. I mean, his numbers from yesterday: 6 dribbles, 3 key passes, 1 through ball, 3 shots at goal, 83.3% success rate from his 24 passes, and he also added in 1 tackle and 1 interception. And like I said, that run he did towards the end, his fitness is incredible. I don't know how, and he's also got the strength. I can't remember who the Villa player was. There was one Villa player trying to barge.
Douglas Luiz? He just knocked him to the ground, didn't he?
Yeah. He tried to fling himself into him, almost like a tactical foul, and he just bounced off him like he's a wall. He is, like I say, 23 years old. Doesn't turn 24 for another, I think it's about 6 months or so. So Spurs have now, they've got him permanently. He's going to be an incredible player, I think, as he reaches his peak, which probably is a good 3 or 4 years off. I think Postecoglou is a brilliant manager. He loves Kulusevski. Kulusevski loves Postecoglou. You can tell everything he says about him. You can tell how much he kind of respects him and how much he's learning from him. And I think he feels the belief from Postecoglou as well. I think he feels that trust from him, and that he's kind of identifies exactly what Kulusevski brings off the ball as well as on it. And yeah, I thought he was superb. I thought he did that dual role as a number 8 and a number 10 really well. There was times when he was on the right of a 3 in the midfield. There was times when he would play just ahead of what ended up becoming Højbjerg and Lo Celso. And there are other times when, do you know what? I mean, you asked, as part of the interview you did in the mix zone with him, he was asked about replacing Maddison. I actually felt that more so than Lo Celso replacing Maddison, I actually felt Kulusevski did a lot of the Maddison stuff. A lot of the through balls, a lot of the clever little back heels and flicks, making the runs into the box himself. I actually think he probably did that more than Lo Celso. Lo Celso was probably more of a deeper withdrawn role on the whole. I've got a lot of time for Dejan Kulusevski, or Dejan. We'll have to listen back to see exactly how he pronounces it. And I just think some people are unnecessarily harsh on him. I sometimes see the odd Twitter comment, and it surprises me because I don't think some fans know exactly what they've got in him. He's got everything, and he's got this incredible work ethic as well. If he just needs, I think, things to go for him. I think he needs other players to be putting away his chances. And yeah, he needs to be that little bit kind of cuter with the finish himself at the end of some of his moves. But that was a big day for him. And I think it showed also for Postecoglou that might be the way to go while Maddison's out, is using Kulusevski in that role. I think it was one massive positive from the game.
Yep. Another positive, I think Postecoglou can say, especially in an attacking sense, Bryan Gil's performance yesterday. That's his.
When you realised he was on the pitch, of course.
I knew he was on the pitch. It was just like you said, 2 minutes after the team news dropped, I didn't see his name in there initially. Must have just glossed over it. But no, fantastic. He was really, really good. I think his last start was in January at Crystal Palace away, the 4-0 win. Played really, really well that day. And you're thinking, here we go, we're going to see Bryan Gil get a bit of a run under Conte. But no, sent out on loan again at the end of the January window. And again, like for Lo Celso, it's just been such a frustrating few months for Bryan Gil, given the injury he's had, trying to work his way back to fitness and, get a place in Postecoglou's plans, because he didn't play a single minute in pre-season, which was really unfortunate for him at a time when he was coming back to club looking to make a real impression. And what I would say yesterday is this selection of Bryan Gil in the starting 11, I think it's a huge show of faith in him, because, Ange could have taken the easy option and gone, right, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg in midfield, Dejan Kulusevski, right wing, Brennan Johnson left wing, but he didn't. He gave Bryan Hill a chance. So the players clearly made an impression on Postecoglou in training, and really, really positive when he was on the ball, running at, I think it was Matty Cash and Ezri Konsa down his right side, down Villa's right side. Yeah, a couple of times, maybe picking the wrong ball, but he's rusty. At the end of the day, he's not played a lot of football this year, but what a ball he put in for Son.
It's terrific.
Whip ball right on his head. I don't know if Sonny pulled out of that one slightly or not. If it was
maybe think he didn't realise it was going to be that good a ball.
Yeah.
He just didn't fling himself at it.
Maybe put it on the plate for him. Unfortunately, Spurs couldn't take that opportunity, but I thought across his time on the pitch, he was just really, really positive. Just some things he needs to work on, but I think it's one of these that he's still adapting to life in the Premier League, because I know it sounds daft, but he's been here 3 seasons now, but we've barely seen him play because he's just never been
22.
Yeah, because he's just never been given that opportunity by Antonio Conte, and probably very similar under Nuno as well for the first couple of months when he was at the club. I mean, they rate him extremely highly in Spain. He's been in the Spanish national squad before. He's certainly got him in him. He just needs that opportunity, and we'll have to wait and see whether he's in the team against Man City. But he's certainly done himself no harm at all with a really, really good performance.
Yeah, Postecoglou was happy with him afterwards. He said he handled himself well. I will always have the physical doubts about Bryan Hill. I do think that's still an area that concerns me slightly when you put him in a lineup. And that's not to say that it's just because of his height or anything like that, because Luka Modric was one of the best players the Premier League's seen. And obviously went on to even bigger things. But I think with Bryan Hill, he is very slight. Whereas Luka Modric had these massive kind of legs as well. He was a very strong core to him. I don't think Bryan Hill's got that. And so there were a couple of occasions. I mean, we did have a slight chuckle trying to watch him kind of trying to get the ball off some of the Villa defenders. It was a little bit like, adults playing with kids like in the park kind of thing, and the kids trying to get the ball off them. There's a couple of moments, but that's not to do down just how talented he is with the ball. He's when he's in full flight dribbling the ball, it's very difficult to get the ball off him, despite that kind of lesser stature or slighter stature. And he did have that big chance early on. Should have put that away. I know it was a tight angle, but I still think that was a big opportunity for him. And he touched the ball a lot. I was looking at some of the stats. Whereas I've got them here. Sonny only touched the ball 32 times on the day. Johnson 39. Both of them played the full 90 minutes, but in only 70 minutes, Bryan Hill touched it 64 times. So that's exactly double the amount of times Sonny got the ball. You could argue that that's a failure in them not getting the ball to Sonny and Brennan Johnson. But also it does show that how much Bryan Hill was involved in the play and how much they kept looking to get the ball to him. I think maybe his partnership with Destiny Udogie would have to be built upon. I don't think that was quite there. There were moments when they maybe could have linked up that little bit better. Yeah, going back to what you said about the selection and maybe it being a kind of a big feather in his cap from Postecoglou, I would maybe argue that as soon as he'd made the decision to play Kulusevski in the number 10/8 role, it was probably only Bryan Hill you could play, unless he was going to make a big gamble, I guess, and put Jamie Donnelly in there, who I'm still wondering when he's going to get his first minutes. I do feel for him because, he's doing everything he can at a youth level. And even in the end of a game like that, maybe isn't getting chucked on. But I guess you could equally argue, why would you take off Son or Johnson, who are clearly Premier League performers that are capable of getting you a goal as well? But as for Bryan Hill, I thought this was a good positive step. I wouldn't say I was blown away by him, but I do think he did far more positive things to kind of push his cause. And yeah, like you, I'm intrigued to see whether he starts against City, because it's very dependent on, I guess, if Postecoglou wants to stick with the way he wants to play, then you probably only change Basuma comes in for Bentancur. Because there's no, well, I guess it depends on Sarr. Sarr, quite interestingly, just to say now, Postecoglou in this press conference only spoke about getting Basuma back and Romero back after the suspensions up against City, and he also in his Spurs play interview spoke about only getting those two players back pre-Christmas. From what I understand, he forgot about Sarr. It's not that Sarr is out until the new year as well. He just forgot about Sarr. So we'll see whether Sarr's available to play against City or not within the next couple of days. Obviously, when we have the presser, but yeah, I'm intrigued to see kind of what he does for that game. But we'll talk about that more. I think we're going to do a second pod this week, talking about various things, talking about some of the players that have headed off from the club and what they're up to on their loans, and also having a really good look at the City game and what's to come. But as for Brian Hill, yeah, step in the right direction is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah. Right, before we discuss a couple more things on the Villa game, it doesn't get more exciting at Tottenham Hotspur this season, and the best way to soak up all the atmosphere is inside premium hospitality. Guaranteed seats to all home matches, indulge in unforgettable dining experiences at Spurs' world-class stadium, and enjoy exclusive member-only events outside matchday too. Premium at Tottenham Hotspur is unmatched. Visit tottenhamhotspur.com/premium to find out more. What I need to say as well about yesterday, the disallowed goals. I didn't realise there'd been so many disallowed goals over the past two home games. 9 in total now, 5 against Chelsea and 4 in the Villa game. Son had 3 disallowed against Villa. Watkins with the other one. Some of the football at times incredible from Spurs, especially the one Son curled into the far corner past Martinez. It was Gil playing the 1-2 with Højbjerg doing the same with Destiny, and Højbjerg then putting Son through. A lot of Spurs football, it's just literally all-out attack. Porro putting a couple of good balls over the top, and what we seem to see more often than not is Spurs getting in behind the defence and then just squaring it for the player in the middle. And yeah, it's just a shame there's a number of chances at the moment. I think they just need to take them, and that's been, you could say, probably the story of the last game. And I know it's 3 defeats out of 3, but in those games, Spurs have played, probably apart from the Wolves game, some really good football. And on another day, could have come away with the victories. And know there are going to be times where they're not at the best, especially at Wolves, but they were 6 minutes away from winning there. So whilst it might all be doom and gloom at the moment, 3 defeats from 3, I think there's still a lot of positives you can take. I just think they need to start being more clinical.
Yeah, I think as Postecoglou used that, it's the old cliche, but it's true. It's fine margins. That's exactly what it is. It's just in those moments, just either doing the right thing and not doing the wrong thing. We see it. It's every football game. It is a massive cliche, but it is also a very true one. Actually, just on Porro, I just think Postecoglou must absolutely love the fact that he's got Pedro Porro. Because Pedro Porro is a Postecoglou player. And it's mad, isn't it? Before, we kind of weren't sure. We weren't sure whether he was going to fit as a natural fullback. And ironically, he's probably up there with the most Postecoglou players that you could get in there. I was looking at his stats as well. 4 key passes. This is a right back. 4 key passes, including that early one when he sent Destiny Udogie through and he poked the ball over the crossbar. Gets the assist for Lo Celso's goal as his corner went all the way through to him. He also had 3 shots at goal, hit the post, won 2 aerial duels, made 1 tackle, 1 interception, and he slung in 10 crosses and 8 long balls with an 84.8% pass success rate. I think Porro's been superb. Yeah, he'll have the odd defensive wobble. I think that's kind of the trade-off you have to have with a player that's so creative. But also on the other side, I think he's got 6 assists now in the Premier League since he came to Spurs, which only Trent Alexander-Arnold and Kieran Trippier have got more than as defenders. I think he's been excellent. He really, really has. And actually, on stats, I found some good team stats. I was going on the Premier League site and going through all the different filters they have. It was a really nerdy session I had on there. And when you think about it, you kind of, they've got no Maddison, Up front, they've lost Richarlison, Solomon, Perisic. All of these options they've actually lost. But the creativity still isn't really that much of an issue, other than the Wolves game. Because I was looking at it, they've had 210 shots at goal this season, Spurs, which only Liverpool with 225 and Man City with 214 have had more. So City have only had 4 more than Spurs all season. Villa actually are in 4th with 194, so you can see the drop. And Arsenal, obviously, we know at top of the table now, they've only had 189 shots at goal, which obviously shows how clinical they've been, I suppose, is the best way to look at that. On target, Spurs have had 77 shots on goal, only City with 93 and Brighton that have also got 77 are in that bracket. And also, this is probably the key one as well, Spurs have missed 20 big chances so far this season. And I think that's where the problem lies. And it's something that I don't know, and this might be something we talk about in the second pod this week, but whether the January transfer window is where they fix that. It is whether they need to bring in another body up front as well that maybe is a bit of a finisher. It may be that, Velis, who came on briefly at the end, maybe he gets a little run and shows what he can do. But I just thought that was interesting, just how many chances on goal Spurs have created, but also how many big chances they've wasted. I think that's probably where it all lies, and it's still an area that we know is still to be improved upon. And before we kind of come towards the end of this, what did you think about the substitutes and the fact that there were 2 goalkeepers and only 6 outfield players on the bench?
I mean, it is what it is. It'd have been nice to have another one of the academy lads on the bench just to give him that opportunity in the first team environment. But obviously, Ange Postecoglou decided against that. We've seen it before when a number of teams had 2 goalkeepers on the bench. Everton, it just seems to like every week the other season.
But they filled the rest of the bench, haven't they?
Not all the time. Sometimes it might have
really?
been just because of maybe injuries and that. But I'm sure someone said yesterday in the press room, Newcastle had 3 goalkeepers on the bench, did they? Against
Well, I guess they could have
Chiltern.
had Hugo Lloris yesterday as well.
Yeah, that's what I did say earlier in the pod. Could have just given Hugo that opportunity again in the matchday squad. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is, isn't it? With injuries at the moment, you always
Is it a
felt
message to the board?
maybe. I think it certainly would have been if Antonio was manager, because you just knew what he was like with the starting 11 and the subs. That was clearly a message, but I think it's clear to see anyway. Spurs maybe don't have the strength and depth that others do, and especially in defence, you knew there was going to be one point when someone was going to either be injured or suspended, and it just came at once. Like Ange said in his presser on Friday, it's not been staggered. It's just literally all come at once. So, yeah, hopefully there'll be 9 on the bench on Sunday at Man City. But if not, I'll take my football boots in case.
That'd be entertaining. What a brilliant podcast that would be. My player ratings would be savage, though. I mean, it's funny you should mention Antonio Conte because he did do that before. I remember that. And he made the excuse that he couldn't use under-21 players because they had a game and he didn't want to disrupt their preparations, which is somewhat ironic because he was always disrupting the under-21s preparations with his training sessions. But funny enough, Postecoglou couldn't really use that because the under-21s didn't have any game this weekend at all. They had a free kind of fortnight since the international break. And from what I understand, there were a handful of under-21s that trained with the first team ahead of the game as well. And like right up to before the game, and I think it was well, we know it was only Donnelly and Dorrington that made the bench from that handful of under-21 players. So, do you know what? I think it was a bit of a message. I think it was. Otherwise, you just put one of them on the bench for the experience, just to because it could benefit them down the line, having already been through that experience before. I think he's saying, look, if you're not aware, we have an entire team of injured players, and not only that, but quite a few of them are not going to be back when the January transfer window even opens. So, you're going to have to bring in players to fill these gaps, and not least the centre-back position that should have been fixed in the summer with another player anyway. I just think it's one of those. I think we've seen it so many times with so many managers do it. It's like a little kind of game, as if to say, "Look at woe is me. Look what I've got at my disposal." And to be fair to Postecoglou, he has got so few options. He is pretty much putting out a team of the players he has available. Whereas, I think we've seen it with other managers. I think Mourinho had a pretty bad injury. Actually, that reminds me. I think there was a point towards the end of Mourinho's first season, maybe it was, when he was really struggling to get numbers out there. Do you remember when they played at Stamford Bridge, and didn't he have Dele up front, or Bergwijn up front, wasn't it? With it was a right mishmash of a team. It was essentially who he had fit on the day. So yeah, maybe he's had that issue before, but yeah, it needs to be. It's one of those. I don't want to go overboard and say, "Oh, Spurs squad is incredibly weak. Look at it." Because I'm sorry, but if you take 11 players out of any squad, 11 senior first team players out of it, they're going to look like they've got a really weak squad. But I do think it was paper thin in a couple of places, and one of those was centre back, and one of those was a creative midfielder. And I think that's where we're seeing the issues now and having to struggle for options. But as we always say, opportunities come out of situations like this, and it may be that Lo Celso shines now. It may be that a youngster like Jamie Donnelly or Valise or even Dorrington gets to have an opportunity in the weeks ahead. And yeah, it's be interesting. I don't think Richarlison will be that much longer either. I think he said that would be only a couple of weeks after international break, so you might see him back soon. But yeah, it's like I said right at the top of this. I do feel like that we're in a period right now where the football's really good, and I can't believe that anyone that went to the stadium yesterday came away thinking, "Oh, that was awful. I hated that." I think they would have seen the positives and seen the football. And actually, there was a nice line from Kulusevski in your interview with him, which I nabbed, which I can read out to you. And he said about the fans, because I've noticed this. Last year, there would have been boos at half time. There would have been boos at full time. Right now, they're not booing at all. They absolutely understand. And even after, I think, again, it wasn't as big as after the Chelsea game, but after Villa's second goal, there was a real kind of like roar in the stadium to get the team going again, rather than kind of people being really like disconsolate. And the Kulusevski quote about the fans, he said, "I really hope they stay with us. I hope, because we will win in the future if we continue like this. It's important we stay together. Everybody in this club and outside is not important what anybody else says. I think inside, everybody needs to have a positive energy and help us players, because we will bring them happiness." And it feels like that. The Postecoglou way, it does feel like the right way. I know there's people who are going to say, "Oh, it's naive, it's gung-ho." I don't actually think it is when it's in full flight, because ultimately the ball is sticking up the other end of the pitch. It's not really coming back even to what it's not even like the games are going to be 6-4 and stuff like that, because the ball is going to spend so little time in the Spurs box. Yesterday, they put 2 or 3 of those shots away in the first half. I don't think Villa even come near to coming back into that game. And I think that's the way they're going to play when they're back to full strength. It's just this process of not only building a team, building a style of play, doing it while he's being kind of handicapped massively by the lack of players that he's got at his disposal. And I think that's something that should be cheered yesterday. He took a team of 11 players that was very much a makeshift patchwork team and got them playing probably the best football of the season and playing pure Postecoglou football. It's really weird, because the result colours the way that we look at it, when actually probably that was the most positive thing about it all.
Well, I've got a quote from his press conference that I was just going to read out. It was, "There were plenty of excuses for us not to be dominant today against a very good and settled Villa side. Thought some of our football was as good as we've played all year." 3 defeats on the bounce doesn't look good, but those results could have been different. Spurs are playing some really, really good football at the moment. And, if they take those opportunities, we could be talking about another 3 wins, Spurs top of the league. It's not happened at the moment. I think there's going to come a game at some point where everything just clicks and someone's going to get absolutely battered against Spurs.
Absolutely.
Because they're creating so much. They really are. Just need to take those chances.
I agree. I do have my fears about next weekend. I do think it's just come at the wrong time for them. I think it's so unfortunate. If it had come, end of January maybe, or even early in the season, I think we'd see a different game. I just think the way Spurs are at right now, it's going to be very difficult against a team of City's quality. But I just hope that people kind of see it as it's almost like a bit of a free hit for me. And I think if you can get past that, then looking at the fixtures that come up after that, I think Spurs could start building some momentum again. I'm quite kind of looking forward to the kind of the games that run into the new year. There's some tough ones in there, but I actually think if they play the way they played yesterday and be more clinical, I think you'll see them go on a bit of a charge.
Yeah. Right. We'll be back later in the week to discuss the upcoming game against Man City and also plenty of other stuff in the world of Tottenham Hotspur. As ever, just keep with us at football.london for all your latest Tottenham news. To grab our huge discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/gold guest. You can receive an extra 4 months for free. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the episode description box.